Hello, good afternoon, and good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Mega Exchange EMEA and North America event. We have an exciting agenda ahead, packed with great sessions on the role of enterprise architecture in the age of AI, best practices for chief architects, customer testimonials, and more. Before we kick off with our first keynote, allow me to introduce myself. I'm Leslie Robinet, the Corporate Services Director at Mega International, and I'll be your moderator for today. For 18 years, I've been accompanying EA initiatives and enabling others to do so. Let me explain briefly what you can expect from today's conference. We're going to start with a keynote from our CEO, Luca De Risi, who'll share his insights on the enterprise architect's pivotal role in driving digital transformation amidst AI disruption. Following that, we'll explore the evolving expectations of chief architects with Grant Ecker from the Chief Architect Forum and Luca De Risi. Afterwards, our customer Katie Myers from NATS will show you HopeX in action with a practical example, explaining their strategic goals and an EA practice in their company. As we move through these live sessions, do feel free to ask your questions. Jean Garrig and myself are leading a dedicated interactive session called Ask the Experts about how to achieve a successful and recognized EA program. We also propose you to discover Mega HopeX together with our experts, Phoenix and Nick, who'll guide you through the newest release of our software, HopeX Aquila. Last but not least, William Ulrich will be on stage to talk about delivering business value through business architecture. Now, for those not familiar with the tool Livestorm that we're using today, you can find on the bottom right a chat tab to interact with the audience and the experts. Feel free to add your thoughts whenever you want. Right next to it, you have a question tab to ask questions to the different participants and the experts, and the team will happily respond now or after the conference. Last but not least, you have a polls tab, because we'll be pushing surveys throughout the conference. You can answer them anonymously and see results in the tab. I'm looking forward to your questions and to these great interactive sessions. Let's get started and make the most of this enriching afternoon and morning together. Please join me in welcoming Mega's CEO, Luca De Risi, to our virtual stage.
Hey, Leslie. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me well?
Yes, it's great. Thanks for joining in. I'm going to leave you the stage, Luca.
For the introduction.
Thank
I would
you.
like to welcome you all also at the Mega EA Exchange Conference 2024. I'm the CEO, Luca De Risi. And Leslie, when you were presenting, I find it so great that you have such a perfect American accent, being native, and yet you present yourself as Leslie Robinet, which is also so French. So that represents Mega, right? The French and American vibe. It's also funny because just before this event, just this weekend, I was having dinner with the head of communication of a major European manufacturer, and he was telling me how he needed some new AI tools like HeyGen in video to do video editing, translating videos into tens of languages right away. And IT wouldn't let him. And so I was thinking, and by the way, he did it anyways, and he bought the tools. And I was thinking, well, enterprise architects at that company must be biting their fingers right now and saying, oh, I'm losing visibility over the application landscape, or running into privacy risks. That's a good day-to-day illustration, I think, of how the race to AI is going to impact the job of enterprise architects moving forward. Let's take just one step backward. A few years back, architecture was seen as a topic for experts. It was really based on frameworks, TOGAF, Archimate, DODAF, strongly rooted in IT. But today, it's a topic that has taken a center stage. It's mission critical. Architecture is present at all major events. And when I talk to CIOs, they often say that they don't imagine anymore building a digital transformation plan without enterprise architecture. So one might wonder why. And well, that's because the pace of change is accelerating. Migrating applications to the cloud, integrating new technologies such as AI. Well, in order to do that, you need to know your application landscape, and that's the role of architects. In fact, if you ask the Chief Architect Network, more than 80% of architects consider that the adoption of artificial intelligence is their utmost priority in 2024, way ahead of cost reduction, even though it is often mentioned, and even a head of cybersecurity. So since everyone is talking about artificial intelligence, let's talk about it too, but through the lens of enterprise architecture. Today, companies have started a real race to artificial intelligence. That's what it is. AI changes everything in companies. That's the business model and the operating model, to use enterprise architecture terms. The operating model, that's how the company works. It's all the processes in a company. And all the processes do benefit from artificial intelligence. Marketing generates content with Gen AI. Customer support provides actually a better quality of service with AI. Developers generate code. Lawyers generate contract templates with AI. Then on the other hand, you have the business model. And the business model, that's the products, that's the customer experience, the services that the company delivers. Transforming the business model, that's shifting from paper to digital. It's going from a perpetual software to a SaaS software. We have something to say about that. Or today, it's moving from traditional products to intelligent products. So AI greatly improves the efficiency of the operating model. And it even has a greater impact on the business model itself. So I think that artificial intelligence it's a massive technological disruption. It's like the internet was, or mobile, or SaaS before, and companies who are lagging behind risk losing competitiveness. The race has started to gain efficiency, that's the operating model, to stay competitive. The problem is that race, it comes at a high risk, but also a high cost. First, it has a frantic pace. In many organizations, everyone wants to adopt AI. That's the example I just had last weekend at dinner. And it's often chaotic. Worse, if business is IT as a burden, then they will buy their own SaaS subscriptions for AI tools, and like the communication department I was referring to, and without asking IT for advice, and that creates a risk of what? It's a risk of data privacy. It's a risk of application redundancy. And then when IT loses visibility, well, that slows down transformation efforts. But also, AI is expensive. Usually, AI programs can cost millions of dollars. And the technology brings inherent risks. So we're talking about hallucinations, we're talking about intellectual property. And finally, regulatory governance is coming up, like the EU AI Act, for instance. And it's a real regulation. It imposes risk assessment, data governance, technical documentation, user training. So what is your role, enterprise architects, in the race to AI? I think there's a unique opportunity today to be the pilot. In large IT departments, chief architects have become the right hands of CIOs. Your goal is to support a CIO in defining the digital strategy. And in the context of artificial intelligence, it's the same thing. You can align business functions with the company strategy for AI. You can organize innovation by collecting needs around AI, then prioritizing use cases, and you can put the guardrails in place to ensure compliance with regulations and reduce risk. Yeah, I think you really can be the pilot for the AI transformation. The challenge is that transformation doesn't work in silos. If you want to modernize the operating model, you first need to understand it. Then you need to understand the technologies that help it operate. New technologies mean new data. New data means new regulations, new data governance. And finally, transformation means operational risk. So I like to say that architects are the ones who are able to connect the dots. You can make the connection between IT and the business, between processes and data, and you make it possible to understand the organization and anticipate the impacts of change, and then even plan for change. Now, understanding the organization is easier said than done. And that's because traditional approaches to enterprise architecture have often failed. That's not because enterprise architecture is bad, but more because it was done with maybe an academic approach instead of a more business outcome-oriented approach. It was more based on documentation, documenting the as-is, often through the large spaghetti diagrams, all the connections. The thing is, drawing all those manual diagrams, that takes a lot of time, and it doesn't show that much value. And so how many times have I heard architects tell me, well, the business thinks architecture is too much effort, or EA is too long. And other times I heard a chief architect tell me, Luca, can you help us market ourselves internally? And that's exactly it. EA was too much description and not enough action, not enough value. So at Mega, we propose a platform. That's Hopex Aquila. It allows you to manage your IT, your processes, your data, your risks, all in a single place. And therefore, it serves like a GPS for enterprise architects. With that information, you can easily identify IT and business dependencies to anticipate the impact of change and therefore also plan for transformation. But the most important point with Aquila is Aquila was just released, by the way, end of 2023. So it's a brand new product that we offer. It has a lot of artificial intelligence. I'll say a little more about it. And now you can accelerate EA efforts. Some of the artificial intelligence we bring in allows you to discover your servers and your networks, to automatically filter what are business applications, what is middleware, because as an architect, you're more interested in the business applications. Those are the ones that will be migrated to cloud and you need to manage redundancies for. And then we even, with AI, propose the matching business capabilities. And the objective there is to accelerate efforts, is to really shift from years of inventory consolidation to build the EA baseline from years to just a few weeks. And with Aquila, you also see some cool things in the demo with the AI Copilot Hexa, which guides you into the platform, provides a series of recommendations on several use cases. So I think it's time for me to conclude the keynote. And to finish, if your role as enterprise architects is indeed, I really think so, your role is to be the pilot for digital transformation, well, then that makes my role to give you the best co-pilot with Hexa on the market. Well, thank you very much for listening to the keynote. It's time for me to introduce our next guest, Grant, if you want to connect. I'll introduce Grant Ecker, founder of the Chief Architect Network. Hey, Grant.
Hey, great to hang out with you today.
Grant is not, we cannot hear you very well, Grant.
Oh.
You're a bit distant.
Wonder why that is. Let me check.
Okay, you're good now, I think.
Okay.
So a quick intro on my side. Grant is the founder of the Chief Architect Network. He's not only a good friend, but he's also, I like to think of Grant as a top thought leader today in the EA space. You must have seen him at several EA events or CIO events. That's tens of events per year. And he also has great experience as a chief architect in Fortune 500 companies like Walgreens and Danaher, for instance. Grant, would you like to complete the introduction before we shift to the conversation?
Yeah, I think you covered it. You know, one of the things I think I really geek out about is running a chief architect network with my peers. And that's a lot of fun. We've got about 260 colleagues that run architecture practices of Fortune 500 size internationally. And we continue to build that out. And it's just been an absolute joy, really learning from folks and growing as professionals together. So if you happen to be listening and are a chief architect, go to chiefarchitectnetwork.com and apply to join us. Or if you're just interested in architecture leadership, follow us on LinkedIn and join the conversation. Let's jump in, Luca.
Yeah, let's do it. And I told you I would introduce you to customers. I think this is a great way to do it.
Yeah.
I value your thoughts, Grant. That's why I wanted to have this first conversation with you. And one of the questions that is being asked to me a lot is, what are the priorities of chief architects in 2024? And I think you're in the perfect place to speak about it. Well, what are the priorities of chief architects in 2024?
Well, I think we as chief architects come up with a pretty nice list on our own, but I think where we really shine is where we put that to the side and ask our CIOs, what do they care about? What are they trying to drive this year? And that to me is what differentiates us and allows us to be an outcome-focused practice. As you mentioned in your keynote, a lot of folks in architecture used to get confused, thinking that an academic focus or process focus was the right approach. And we effectively, as architects seeing across, knew better than all of those executive stakeholders. I think a modern architecture practice really looks to the leadership to understand what outcomes we're trying to achieve and tunes our practice to ensure that we're going to be a big part of that success. So while I have my own list, kind of what I need to do to kind of sweep the shop floor, I'd lean into what my CIO is trying to achieve, and what often they're looking into is trying to quell the board's appetite and the CEO's appetite for data and AI and innovation, right? So data, of course, is the foundations that allow us to build a lot of these sort of, we'll say, competitive advantage AI applications. Certainly, we can all deploy the chatbots and the co-pilots and get some basic low-hanging fruit of capabilities. But if we want to differentiate, we have to figure out how to connect the AI ecosystem with the data ecosystem to provide differentiating insights. We also have a big focus from CIOs, particularly with some of the pressures in our economy, on cost cutting. And that can come in the form of application rationalization, process harmonization, automation, RPA. It doesn't always have to be the newest toys, but it's about how can we get outcomes at a lower cost? How can we do the same or more for less? And I think one of the things we can provide as architecture is a look across to start to figure out, where are we doing the same things? Where are we duplicating efforts? Where could we start to create pattern libraries so that we're taking something off the shelf and using it again, as opposed to having to recreate each time to kind of create efficiencies for the teams that are deploying technology? Of course, I'd be crazy if I didn't mention transformation. We see a ton of folks trying to support digital transformation in their businesses, and we become a giant catalyst for that space, seeking to really connect across, figure out for each of these transformations, how is that macro scope going to drive the overall outcomes? Who needs to be on the bus designing the solution as well as supporting the change? And lastly, and not leastly, the key operational challenges we see. A lot of times, the chief architect plays the role of the chief family counselor. And for us to be able to bring people together and kind of help them align on common outcomes and incentives, sort of
The
closes
chief
some of
family
those.
counselor.
That's right. That's
I
right.
love the expression. Who's the family?
The family is the CIO's staff. The other
Mhm.
metaphor I like to say is we're the chief coach, which is really bringing across the technical community. So between that counseling and coaching, we hope to really smooth the ocean. And one
And
last thing I didn't mention, which you did, Luca, which I
yeah.
actually agree with, is security. We
Mm.
have to do all these things in a secure way. So while it isn't usually the thing that we're trying to achieve at the top of the list, it's the how. So I wanted to bring that in as well.
So you mentioned artificial intelligence. That's
Mhm.
a trendy topic, and everyone, CIOs, NEAs are interested. You mentioned data. You mentioned cost cutting. You mentioned transformation, security. Yeah, I think those four are definitely top of the list. And then you mentioned counseling the family. And as promised, we're going to go off script, and
Yeah.
it's more fun. And I'm interested in how many people do you talk to as a chief architect? What is your day-to-day life, and how do you make sure that you get respected and you can do what you're here to do?
Well, I think I kind of break it into three categories.
Mm.
Focusing up to understand what outcomes we're trying to achieve. So I'm speaking to the CIO, I'm speaking to business leaders, I'm speaking to the C-suite, especially when carving out new innovation like AI, understanding what's important to the ethics and compliance group, what's important to HR, really understanding it and getting an understanding where it matters, because you can have conversations all over, but really, what is the scope that's new and different? What relationships do we need to make sure we have a comprehensive viewpoint? And then also connecting externally to be able to bring in those conversations, which is why I love the Chief Architect Network. The next is focusing across. I believe the Chief Architect is successful if they help the CIO and their team, which is our peers. Even if we don't report as peers, they are, right? This is really like the context of how we should be thinking about it. How do we help them win with their own people? So understanding what each of them is seeking to accomplish and how we can get them from here to there is incredibly important. So in order to do that, we have to have ongoing conversations with these folks and understand and build trust. So they'll tell us when what we're doing doesn't resonate. And certainly focusing across and beneath, I guess I should say, but beneath has a context I don't necessarily love. But the idea is, how do we empower the technology leaders that report to those top level leaders in IT and make sure their voice is heard, make sure we understand what gaps they see in what they're being asked to accomplish, and create a bi-directional conversation that aggregates common themes, among the technology leaders and with common themes among the IT executives, and close the gap and sort of champion that. And that also indicates where in that extended stakeholder of subject matter experts and technologists, we need to deepen our conversations because they have a timely domain that's core to the success of the organization.
I love the explanation, and that makes me think of, you mentioned artificial intelligence, and that's still, I think, quite a new topic. I mean, sure, ChatGPT came up a year and a half ago, but since then, I've seen so many programs launched by CEOs or CIOs, millions of dollars to just bring in artificial intelligence in exactly in all the processes of an organization. It's massive. I see that chief architects are definitely involved. I said maybe the pilots even in there. But how do you see that? How do you see chief architects and architects in general leading the race to AI? And really, I'd like to see the field experience there, and how is it difficult, and how do you overcome those challenges,
Well, I think the chief architect is in a really great position as an interim or full-time permanent leader in this space because we drive innovation as a part of our function. We understand and curate the business capabilities we have to solve. We start to understand and assess technology in the discover phase from external. We start to classify and understand which of those trade show apps are worth putting internally. And then we start to pilot and then incubate them as they move into what I call the architecture support zone, of where we have real execution teams built up and supporting that technology. So I see us sort of on the vanguard view, understanding what's coming and helping to really refine that pipeline so we can really bring in the right technology that's going to drive.
And would you say on that line, if I may interrupt?
Yeah, please.
Would you say that the role of the architect is more on the planning transformation or executing transformation?
Well, I think we really sit right in the middle. We are the bridge between strategy and execution. We help to articulate the business strategy into the key capabilities and the work stream: business, information, technology, process, right? I added business. It's really people, process, information, technology. And then start to incubate how that moves into information architecture, solution architecture, technical architecture, while bringing security architecture throughout. That's kind of how I see it.
I think that leads to a natural transition, and I think many of the people connected to the conference today are also interested in the HOPEX solution, in Mega and the solution. So, in your view, what is the role of the architecture repository or the architecture tool when it comes to architecture and transformation?
This is the exact same kind of thing we think about as architecture practices in the comments I shared at the beginning of the call. I think it's really important that we're looking at this tool that can do a whole number of things as a toolkit, a toolbox, and we don't want to grab a hammer when we need a screwdriver. So if we're going to be doing, digital transformation, then we might want to be using some of the, customer journey and process mapping to start to show how we're going from an as is to a to be, customer journey and process. If we're going to be doing, technical modernization and road mapping, well, where are we going to be changing? So we understand where we can map the current state today and then start to build a picture for the future state. And this is where some of the new AI capabilities in this tool really start to help us, because it can detect and understand the current state by what it's seeing in the infrastructure. That really reduces the amount of steps we have to take on what's considered low value current state work, which is necessary, because if you don't know where you are, how can you build a plan to where you want to go?
So the first step is understanding where you are, the as is, and then moving to the planning or transformation.
But you have to be really careful here, because it's very easy to get lost in a sea of where we are. And that's one of the mistakes we get, is document everything, get the entire current state to the nth level detail. You really have to focus that on the pieces that are moving and get clarity there as the priority. Where you can get additional clarity, great. But this is kind of how EA can get bogged down, is we get too stuck in trying to get a perfect picture of how everything looks.
As is, and the documentation and all the intricacies. Where would you say is the must-have? What do you need to have as an architect documented to move forward?
It really does depend on what the CIO is trying to achieve. And I think that's something we really have to be open to. If I think I need X, I must have Y, I need Z. Like, do you? Do you really? Like, look in the mirror really hard. What would happen if I didn't have it? Now, I'd say there's some things that really help, which is a capability model that allow us to understand our what and map that out. But there's different levels of, degrees of rigor in a business capability model. You can start with something from APQC and get pretty close. You can grab from a tool that can provide a template, or you can go to the granular level detail. So I think even something as simple as a business capability model, look at where the business needs you to go, look at where your leadership needs you to go. And I think just enough architecture is kind of the key to success, because it allows you to start to focus on the people around you and the other things you need to activate to really build that ecosystem to drive
the business
change.
capability model, definitely one of the starters, even though it only gained maturity and adoption recently. And I guess the IT landscape, at least the application landscape, if you listen to if you read the Amazon 6 R's, the first thing they say is discover your applications first, so then you know what to migrate. Applications, capabilities. When we talk about transformation, because in the end you say that you have to adapt to your CIO's priorities, that's usually connected to transformation, whether it's AI or rationalization or another kind of transformation. And in the end, transformation is usually not just one thing. It's a connection of data, processes, IT. Would you say that your EA tool or EA repository can be the hub for transformation, for digital transformation?
Absolutely. I mean, 100%. I mean, if you're building all this stuff in PowerPoint and in manual tools, it's a lot of work, and it's really easy to be inconsistent with yourself. So this is where tooling can really help you, because it helps you build consistency and something that's rooted in a system that keeps track of the underlying movements in the environment and interconnection. We hear about data mesh. Well, that's what an architecture tool is. Pick up any piece of the mesh, and the rest of the architecture puts itself in alignment with it. So can you do this without a tool? Sure. Can you build a house without construction equipment? It was done in the 1800s, right? But I think the more we have that helps us modernize our approach and focus on the thinking versus like the brute force of what it takes to build something, the better off we are.
I see we are close to the end of the meeting, of the conversation, and Leslie is connecting. We have time for questions, Leslie, don't we?
Yes, thank you, Luca and Grant, for this insightful exchange. It was cool to hear about the CIO expectations and the tools for excellence in EA. A lot of activity in the chat. Thanks, audience. It's great. Cool comments, questions, but we have to select. So the first question we want to propose for you, Grant, is could you comment on the role of a chief architect in the context of autonomous agile teams?
Yes. So this is super important that we're paying attention to what our peers need. So if we're in a heavy agile environment, a dev-centric environment, we need to create agile architecture. Now, there's a number of methodologies out there that can help us do this. Some are more favorable to EA than others. But the fact is, how do we make ourselves a business partner and adapt to bring our approach to something that resonates for those stakeholders? Usually a technical architecture approach is really resonant, looking at the epics that are going to be architecturally significant and starting to plan out the design a couple sprints ahead. Whereas things that aren't architecturally significant, get the heck out of the way. Like, make it easy for these folks to choose their paint color and tile the kitchen. Those things aren't architecturally significant decisions. It's when they want to blow out the garage to an extra stall, or they want to build another floor on the building. We got to spend some time together to do that thoughtfully. And if we do it right, then those agile teams actually value us as contributors in that work. And that's actually how we know we were successful. We check in, we do a net promoter score. Did you get value from the architecture engagement? If not, why not? If yes, what was great? And kind of present those outcomes together. What's that?
It's not policing, it's enabling.
Oh, we are enabling no matter what. We have to be enabling. Policing was never right, but we got by a decade ago doing it. But that is a aged approach, and if we're doing that, it's a reactive practice, which means you're missing so much upfront collaboration you needed to build in at the right time.
Do you have time for more questions, Leslie?
Actually, no, we're a bit behind already, and we just got started, but it's fascinating. Thanks again to both of you, Luca, for your keynote, Grant and Luca, for this discussion. Thank you so much. I'll see you soon.
Thanks,
we'll
guys.
take it offline for the other answers. Bye, Grant. Thank you very much.
The conversation continues. In our next session, you'll discover how NATS utilizes enterprise architecture and roadmaps, leveraging HOPEX to enhance business planning, decision-making, and governance. To talk about this with us, we're happy to welcome Katie Myers. Katie's the head of EA at NATS and an experienced air traffic management professional with a strong background in aviation and aerospace. She leads complex change programs from conception to implementation, and today she talks to us about the strategic planning and enterprise architecture at NATS. Hey, Katie, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Leslie?
I'm great. So with this international conference, Katie's coming to us from the UK. So I don't know if you have a nice sunshine like we do in Paris, but
we do.
I'm going to leave the floor to you. Leave it to you then. Thank you, Katie.
Great. Thank you, Leslie. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. And let me just share my screen. So I'm here to talk to you today about how our journey in terms of strategic planning at NATS and air traffic control and what that means. And just to start, I've got a little short video just to explain air traffic control to those of you that are not familiar with it, to help you understand what the business looks like and what our challenges are. So hopefully that's helped explain air traffic control to those of you not familiar with it. Continue. So to summarise, we've got a series of control centres that manage all of the UK airspace and some more as well. We provide air traffic control services at airport towers and remotely via digital towers as well. And we also provide aviation services to a whole host of industry stakeholders across the globe, internationally, in over 30 different countries. To give you an idea geographically of what that airspace is, you saw some of that in the video. We've got some domestic airspace, mainly over the UK, but also over the ocean, the North Atlantic as well. So that's kind of what it looks like in the context of Europe. So moving on to the case study then and what we've been doing in terms of architecture. So when I joined the team in Post a few years ago, what we had was a number of different bits of information across the organisation, not necessarily connected, not necessarily aligning with each other, understanding a corporate strategy, which a lot of us have, understanding our business planning, our operational and our technical strategies, and also a whole host of regulation as well. And what we sought out to do is sort of understand how all of that comes together and how we can pull that into a strategic planning approach through a roadmap. So what we've been developing is effectively understanding our business drivers, pulling that into a strategic planning function, which I'm going to dive into in a bit more detail in a second, which pulls together different levels of roadmaps and analysis, and using that to drive all of our investment, drive our change portfolio, drive our local investment as well, so that as that implements and as that improves our business performance, it goes full circle again, updating our business drivers. And this is a continuous process. This isn't a waterfall, one cycle through and you're done. All of these things are happening continuously all at the same time. So architecturally, what are we talking about when we're looking at that strategic planning function and roadmaps? Is effectively we've got a set of drivers which are imperatives, and they lead through to goals and benefits, which help outline what capabilities do we need, where are we going in the future. And then when we get through to delivery and trying to understand how that changes the organisation, we look at what is the design of the organisation today, split into what we refer to as building blocks. And for the delivery aspects, we look at, well, what are the changes to those building blocks? How are they grouped into projects, and how do they adhere to our architectural principles and make sure we're making the right design choices as we go through that investment programme? So in terms of what it looks like, we have, we export all of our data into a web page that's visible to all of our users across the whole company. So this isn't restricted to the architecture team. We have a knowledge base, which is fully interactive and gives all of those users, all of those stakeholders access to the information that's in the formal enterprise architecture that we pull out of MegaHopX. So we have this entry page here, and then we have a more user-friendly entry page that we can direct to our non-technical colleagues that contains words from the strategy that they recognise, so they understand how it fits with how they understand the strategy. It's not necessarily just an architectural language, but there are those two entryways into the content. And for the main roadmap for the organisation, this is what we refer to as our ATM roadmap, our air traffic management, which is our core business. And what we have there is there's a set of goals which are effectively capability driven for our operations colleagues, and underneath that our technical colleagues, underpinned by the regulation that we need to meet. And what we're introducing is effectively a strategic planning function to look around that, understand, are they individually good? What does the collective set mean? Is there any risk as a result of that? How are we progressing against that strategic plan? And understand what are the benefits we're going to get from that, and start to provide all of that ancillary data that helps us make the best decisions for that forward planning. There is more information on these goals, but I can't show you, but effectively we start to understand what's the impact going to be, what's the benefit to the customer, how does it fit with our business plan, etc. And we're able to pull all of that information up internally. You can see some of that information here. There's a sanitized version of it where we can start to show those heat maps. And so how does that translate into what's actually going to be delivered? So sitting underneath that overall high range capability roadmap, what we have is a series of technical domain roadmaps, and we're developing them for other areas of the organisation as well. So for this particular domain, which is information, we understand what is that comprised of, so which applications effectively, or which assets do we have inside that technical domain, but also what is the change plan to that over time. And we can start to show out those different cuts of the roadmaps based and with knowing that there is traceability all the way back up to that overall capability view. And we can also start to pull out the same metadata, the same analysis, understanding how are those individual changes contributing to either improving that overall service? How do they fit with the portfolio? but also really importantly, you can start to do really interesting analysis and visualizations in terms of dependencies with that data as well, and start to understand how complex is our change program and where are there dependencies that we maybe hadn't realized because they're 2 or 3 different steps removed, and using that to inform our risk management and the way we manage the projects, etc. So that's an overview of how our case study and what we've been doing inside NATS with the help of Mega. I think the things we've learned from that are basically, we have a cross-functional team, so it's not just an architecture team that we have. We have operational users, we have finance people, we have some of the management team as well. We have a lot of the engineers involved, all working on a weekly basis to develop this capability so it's fit for purpose. The EA team is completely embedded in that cross-functional team, so they are peers with the rest of their expert colleagues across the business. It's not just an EA-led activity. It's possibly counterintuitive, but we've had to really learn to go slower, to go faster sometimes in order to get the real value, especially in our industry. We need to know that the data is accurate, so we can prototype and test certain things, but in going slower, we have achieved more over time. And having a senior sponsor as well that understands this, understands the value of EA and is able to translate that to the less technical areas of the business has been powerful. And finally, governance. There is no value in doing this if we're not embedding it properly and making sure that it's part of the working organisation and it's almost self-maintained going forwards, which is one of our principles, and that's something that's really, really benefited us as well. So that's it from me. Thank you very much, everyone. Leslie, I think you're going to come in and see if there's any questions.
Yes, great. Katie, thank you so much for that presentation. And it's interesting to hear about the journey of the air traffic management roadmap. I've seen many interesting questions in the chat, so let's pick one. What's the next thing NATS will do to benefit the architecture?
So the next thing that we're looking at is effectively linking through not just those technical roadmaps, but also the operational roadmaps as well, to understand when we're doing our business planning, how does it impact our end customers? So for example, the military, we want to be able to pull out a subset of that information to present that to the customer and use it in those discussions so that they can see from the work that we're already doing, how does that benefit them directly?
Cool, that sounds promising. Thank you again, Katie. Yeah. And this has been great. Audience, Katie will stay available in the chat for your additional questions. And thanks again for being with us today, Katie.
Great. Thank you very much, Leslie. Bye.
I'm delighted to not only be a moderator today, but also have a dedicated session with Jean Gehrig from Lean 42. For those who don't know her, Jean Gehrig is an expert IT executive and chief architect with extensive experience in strategy and governance. She's led the Federation of Enterprise Architecture Professional Organizations and served on multiple advisory boards and helps now companies with digital transformation and business resiliency. Hey, Jean, how are you?
Hi, this is really fun. Thanks for having me.
We're glad too. I'm really excited about this Ask the Expert session together with you. So let's get the party started.
Well, like Mark Twain always said, you know, an expert is just another guy from a different town. So, and you and I come from Virginia, so we're good.
Exactly, born in Virginia. Before we get into it, just want to let the audience know what they can expect with our session today. So we picked with Jean 3 themes that we find pertinent regarding how to set up and have an EA program that takes off. And when we're talking about these, we want to talk about some key success factors that make that be the case, some of which may be underutilized, lesser known. So we hope you can get some cool takeaways. And we also wanted to mention that 20 minutes is super short to talk about all the things we want to say. So the conversation does continue. Jean and I would love to keep talking with you about this. And so don't hesitate, please reach out. Okay. So to get started, let's kick off with a poll. Audience, how do you perceive that your EA practice, your EA in your organization is currently perceived? Are you maybe right now not heard, not recognized, value not yet perceived? Or perhaps you're already visible. You're in a push mode, but you are considered as useful. Or do you consider that you're known and trusted, and even those in the organization coming to you for your expertise, for your data? Gives you guys just a little bit of time to answer. Okay, let's go see about the results in the poll. Wow, we got a predominant amount of the audience that's indicating that you exist for the organization. You've been seen. You've been able to demonstrate that you're useful. So bravo for that. That's already a pretty great feat. But that you still, considering that you're having to be proactive and pushing out to the organization and less so than coming to you. Very interesting. So our first theme that we chose with Jean is to talk about value of enterprise architecture. Because if we say we want to have an enterprise architecture practice that generates a lot of value, let's first talk about what is the value, and then what are the factors that let that value come to be. So the two key elements that we've identified as a focus were, and not in the right order, because why not? You're going to have value because you're replying to the challenges and the opportunities of your organization, not just doing EA to do EA, but that your purpose that you've defined for your EA reflects the purpose and the reason to be and the strategy that your organization has defined. Because if you're not aligned to that and showing that alignment, making that connection, and that your internal audience has not seen that you made that connection, you're not going to get the traction you're looking for and the recognition that you need, and in fact won't bring the results that you're hoping to achieve. And the second piece is that to really take off, you need to be able to have this EA value proposition understood and recognized by management and by your user base. Jean, what are you, we've talked earlier before this session about communicating on the mandate. Tell us more about why you consider this to be underutilized or lesser known as the key success factor, and what does that look like communicating on the mandate, and how does that help us demonstrate the EA value, in your opinion?
So when I first started out in EA, like 2007 is when I stood up my first EA organization. And back then it was all about marketing EA, talking about it. And as I progressed through the career and, stood up more and more EA, it was like, yeah, you do have to market. You have to market everything in IT to get visibility. But one of the things I've always found is that your enterprise architecture, the difficulty of EA, in my opinion, is not developing the program, right? But determining how to use it. And then once you use it, understanding out who are the stakeholders, determining why you're there, building and evolving it. And at Freddie Mac, for an example, I had a marketing person. We had so many stakeholders. We were like, okay, I need somebody with a marketing background who could communicate, identify who the stakeholders were, how do they want to be spoken to, how do they want reports, do they want weekly telecoms, do they want presentations, understanding, that's part of really understanding why a VA and who your audience is. So I think it's really an unknown success factor is to create that communication plan almost as part of your service catalog, identifying, okay, here are our services, here's our engagement model, and then staying in touch with those stakeholders. And a couple other tricks I've used is I used to print out business cards for my architects, and on the back of their business card was a very simple vision mission statement of this is what we do. And so if they saw somebody in the elevator, they had their elevator speech, or if they were talking to somebody, whether it was a programmer or a dev lead or someone in ops, they had a you kept the message consistent, and you kept your stakeholders informed the way they needed to be informed.
Mm-hmm. I like what you said here because you hit on 3 key pieces. One is when you said you were leaning out to someone that was an expert in marketing. You're just reminding everyone that EA that brings value is not EA with a couple of experts in a room with the door closed. It's an EA that knows how to reach out to those who have the right skills, the right knowledge, and to involve them. And it's not just about delegating. It's just that's how knowing where the strengths that different people and departments have, and the more that we're in this collaborative approach, I think the more qualitative the results are going to be. That was the point 1 I really like that you said. Point 2 is when you're talking about when you're just talking with the different stakeholders, that you're adapting to vocabulary that works for them, speaking their language, not just deciding when I'm going to give a given message, but what message fits for each party. Sometimes enterprise architecture can be can kind of give a reaction to be scary. What in the world is that? It sounds really technical. It sounds really complicated. Well, orienting it towards putting yourself in the shoes of the party on the other side, the role on the other side. What are they getting from it as far as outcomes, and what involvement we're expecting from them? So the more they're directly involved in seeing what they're getting from it, the more likelihood that it's going to take off. So that
when you have your engagement model, you can literally do a mind find and find out in your engagement model, whether it's starting with the CIO and the C-suite, what's your engagement with them, what's your engagement models are important. How do you engage with the PMO? How do you engage with business architecture? Having those engagement points and understanding that's part of your relationship and the expertise that you need and require as feedback into your EA program.
And the other aspect of it, I mentioned 3 earlier that I heard you touch on, that is key is that you're not just thinking about what you can throw out there, but how is this information going to be used? And it be represented in a way. So you mentioned reports, dashboards. Okay, it might even be leveraging the intranet portal of the company that has a nice big visibility. But you're not going to talk in the same way and show the same things. Try to use visual representations. So what's really cool is nowadays we have a lot of capacities for data visualization and reporting. So that does ease the accessibility of what you're trying to demonstrate. So for me, when we talk about demonstrating value with EA, it's first we actually have to generate value. So that's kind of the starting point. You can't demonstrate something you didn't do. And the second is the way you're communicating on it, the timing, the vocabulary, outcomes to the right publics.
Yeah.
I'm just going to look down here in the chat if maybe we've had any questions that have come in on this theme so far, or maybe not. This is pure live, people. So here goes my eyes reading in the chat questions. Did you guys also see anything going on there? Okay. They're all enjoying talking to Katie, which is fascinating. Enjoy.
Oh, that's
continue. Seems to be that after each session, people are talking about the previous session, which is fine. Okay, so there is a question from the audience that says, Jean, isn't this part of the stakeholder management to plan communication of EA into the enterprise? What is the difference in your communication?
There's the communication plan that is part of your program, right? But there's also, which is who do you communicate, how do you communicate, and when do you communicate? But there's also the day-to-day, what I call, actually before COVID, you had hall room chats or, an elevator speech or whatever. And that's where I think it's really important to have everybody in your EA program should really understand what your mission vision is, and especially who are you, what do you do, how do you do it, and put it in layman's terms, simple as possible. And that's why I created the business cards for people, is like kind of quick reminders. I just think it's very, very important to be able to speak. You know, if you say business capability, then be able to say this is what a business capability is. If you're good at terms that may be different for your stakeholders, then you have to be able to describe those, right? To communicate those, and then touch on that that value, especially if you're in a project. You want to identify, okay, I do this part in this project, and this is the value I'm bringing. So it is kind of doing self-marketing at all times, which is probably a leftover from, you know, years gone by. But I just think it's really important to use multiple types of communication channels. Like you said, most companies have an EA website internally, and they can get the basics there. They can get the service catalog. How do we get to the tools? That's that. But I think as a team, you still have to keep that fresh.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. I also see another question about common challenges and pitfalls when implementing an EA architecture strategy and how best we can address them. That's a big question. There's a lot of things we could say about that.
That is. So when I first started out, enterprise architecture was basically a strategic tool, right? You know, it came with a mission, a vision, methods, taxonomy, some tools. It was basically an approach to accelerate, you know, the capabilities of the organization to achieve objectives. Now I have seen EA evolve, and it still does asset management. I'm not saying that hasn't gone away, but it's now becoming more kind of like Luca was saying, it's more mission critical. We're being pulled as consultants, advisors, at least to the C-suite team. And we are working more and more on operational models, AI, transformation, cybersecurity. So we still do traditional EA, but it's almost as though it's evolved to another layer. And I think the challenge there is to always understand that EA is a continuous, its own business model is continual because it has to evolve. You know, if you don't understand why you're doing EA, the purpose behind it, and that changes, and you have to refresh your own business model almost on an annual basis, then your EA program is going to be doomed to failure. You need to focus on the business outcomes. Certainly do your traditional, but really keep focusing on, why am I doing EA? What's the value proposition that we bring? What are the outcomes? And be able to demonstrate those and talk about those.
Jean, I want to react to what you're saying here because that's something I've seen as well as far as the pitfalls on some of the EA practices is that there's a big energy to set them up, and then they kind of stagnate because they didn't ask that question as they keep moving forward of, how am I keeping what I've done pertinent, fresh, reliable? So it's not just, okay, I made an inventory and okay, all done. It's like, I need to first have a system in place to maintain that, and that it's going to keep living, that we can celebrate victories together as we're achieving them and continue to reinvent ourselves and evolve because the world keeps evolving, our organizations evolve with them. So EA is there to accompany that change.
Quick tip on challenges. One of the other challenges is not only to keep your EA organization fresh, but to celebrate. We are not taking the people time. We're not looking at the people part of EA enough and celebrating wins and communicating those wins out.
Yeah.
Because we're always moving on to the next thing, right?
Very true. To finish up on this section that we're talking about the value of EA and resonating back with the remarks that Jean and I have been making. At Mega, we apply an approach, a framework that is also business outcome oriented step by step towards being influential. You can't skip steps. You have to go one by one. Everybody starts at the beginning. Unfortunately, sometimes we stay at the beginning a bit longer than we'd like. And that beginning is kind of inevitable because at first we aren't being heard. We might be working hard, but not being recognized. So I'm happy for you in the audience that so much of you are indicating that you consider that your EA is useful and that the stakeholders have seen that. But in order to continue to progress in your EA maturity, we continue to reevaluate, like you said, your purpose, Jean, and what are the next use cases? What is the next thing that will be helping the company, the organization prepare itself for and anticipate change? So being on following the strategy of the organization to address the use cases that are really pertinent for them right then, to continue to be more and more implanted in this web network internally amongst the different departments. So talking about use cases, audience, for you, where you intervene, where you work, where you practice, what are the key use cases that are your top priorities right now? Digital transformation, cost optimization, compliance, IT compliance, security, AI governance, technology innovation and adoption, and or legacy systems modernization. Give you guys just a minute. I'm going to vote too, because Mega has transformations too. So we're going to vote on that. So let's take a look at the answers coming in. I'm looking at this poll screen. Interesting, quite a widespread. A lot of digital transformation, legacy, handling legacy systems modernization. Mega's been around for 30 years, so this is a topic for us too, constantly being moving towards the future, managing our legacy. Very interesting. Digital transformation is really on the top of your votes on the poll. So this brings us into the second theme of our intervention today with Jean. We wanted to talk about how through EA and for a EA practice that is successful, we're connecting the dots across the organization and breaking silos. How the transverse aspect of EA is part of its power. Two critical success factors that we identified on that. One is bringing visibility on this enterprise architecture environment, that we can see the relationships between the business, service components, technical aspects, and that then this is allowing kind of to leverage the interconnectivity that you're exposing. And the second aspect is the more we're wanting to branch out and involve stakeholders in different departments, delegating also the ownership behind information that's key for us, such as the business lead, the technical lead, the risk department, data office. These different parties and stakeholders we're bringing in will, if we need to manage a bit this repository that we're sharing, got to do housekeeping, got to keep it under control so that it is quality, relevant, up to date, complete. So that isn't improvised. You do have a little bit of control on that. But Jean, in your opinion, what are the lesser known success factors related to these? Can you tell us more about what you mean when you and I were talking the other day about collaborative architecture governance? And then I think that you were mentioning also about how we can achieve this interconnectivity inside of the organizations.
So when we were talking about collaborative governance, to me, I call that future fit, because 2007, I stood at my first enterprise architecture governance program. And I've been kind of it was kind of like, I don't know, a recipe. And so I just sort of built on that over the years. But governance for enterprise architecture practice, you know, it starts out traditional. You know, you are really controlling the landscape. You're all about getting it documented, you know, getting tools, getting it documented, and controlling that landscape. And then you kind of moved, into modern, where you've got your architecture review board and you're looking, you have the visibility, often a 360-degree visibility across your landscape, and you're going into some business capabilities. So you can really review investment decisions or change management decisions. And I've seen that's where you get your executive team on those boards so that they're more engaged and they see, okay, visually, here's an impact coming in. It's going to cost this much. This is going to be the fallout for that. So that's in my thing is modern, and that's kind of the target where most companies are residing. But now I'm seeing and trying to promote what I call future fit, which is kind of a hybrid. You still have the traditional, you still have the modern, and it's focused on more on continually enhancing that ecosystem. And the reason is because you need to have delivery through customer journeys, value streams, even life cycle streams. And I think that's where what I call collaborative governance comes in. You're doing the guardrails. You've got that. You understand your landscape and you can control it, just visually, if nothing else, by seeing what's going on and then raising those guidelines, et cetera. But I think it's more now about future fit. And that's where AI comes in, transformation. I mean, I'm doing a lot of research right now on the governance of AI data. How are we integrating that into architecture governance? Because EA should be driving, or at least consulting and advising on how AI is coming in, being selected and being used within the company. So I see that's kind of how I see the evolution of governance.
Okay. Our time is running a little short, so we can get on to our next themes. I'm going to accelerate a tiny bit, Jean. I know we had more to say about that last theme, but it's okay. This also I want to just touch a word on something that resonates back with Luca's introduction speech today, and that is connected to what we were just talking about, connecting the dots. Okay, because business transformation is not going to work in silos. If we want to modernize the operating model, we first have to master it. And we need to understand the technologies that allow it to operate. And who says technology says new data governance. Finally, who says transformation says operational risk. So the architect is there to connect these dots, and you're the one that makes the link between IT and business. And that's what's going to also go back and generate that value that we were talking about with EA. And it lets you allow everyone to understand in the organization, anticipate the impact that changes will have on the rest of the company. Chat, your answers, audience. What do you think are the required skills to succeed as an enterprise architect, or for an enterprise architecture practice to succeed? You can start piling them in, and Jean and I will start talking about what we've seen and what we've observed. This is our last theme. Our last theme is about the skills, some that are known, recognized for enterprise architecture to be a success, and some that we consider less developed, maybe sometimes lesser known. One of those is what I was just mentioning about the connected EA, which is when you are getting that, how can I say, vision, the connected vision. So a hard skill would be, you understand, if you're going to work in EA, you understand how generally how IT works, how a technical and application architecture and your sector. But to really have EA success, you need to be able to manage human dynamics and also get that big picture view that's going to come from looking at the full system, having a holistic approach. So do you want to touch on a couple of those particular lesser known skills, maybe, Jean?
So shout out to Steve Boyd, because he just mentioned storytelling. Thumbs up, Steve. So superpowers. I always consider the soft skills of an architect have like 4 superpowers, and superpowers are the superheroes of soft skills that help you level up your architecture game. There's openness, so you've got to deal with challenges. You need to be able to express your views without fear, and embrace some exposure, right?
Mhm.
There's values. Elvis Presley once said that values are like fingerprints. Nobody's got the same ones, but we all leave our marks, right? So your values need to be present and communicated, especially like example, on a project team, you're going to choose people, probably if you have the opportunity, that have values similar to yours, because they're going to align with what your goals are and how you work, et cetera, et cetera. Resilience is huge. It's a real shift in mindset. I think that architects need to be resilient to be successful. They have to reframe challenges to opportunities, right? That's a mindset that we haven't been taught anywhere. And story stewardship, again, back to Steve Boyd. Story stewardship is really, really important in my opinion, because you're safeguarding that story's outcome. You're kind of the keeper of that original content, and you've got to translate that and tailor it to other audiences, right? So that it becomes more resonant to those groups. But storytelling is huge. So I have a little ebook that's coming out soon, and it's all about superpowers, openness, values, resilience, and storytelling. And I think the soft skills side will probably be a huge focus for architects that are driving their career forward, because those are soft skills, and we're not taught those in IT land. We're taught hard skills.
Yeah, I really love this topic, and I am so disappointed we can't talk more about it. I invite everyone to come back to these slides afterwards and look more into that and continue this discussion outside of the conference, but we have to move forward. Thank you so much again, Jean, for being here with me. It was fun. I really enjoyed it. I'll see you soon.
Okay. All right.
Bye.
Have a great conference. This has been fun.
Thank you. So, audience, today, so far together, we've been talking a lot about strategy and methodology and approaches. So let's take some time now to show you what our tool HopeX is capable of. With our recent release of HopeX Aquila, we've changed the user interface and user experience. New reports are available, and of course, we integrated AI. But let's not just talk, but dive directly into the world of Mega HopeX. For that, please welcome with me Nick Hatfield and Phoenix Evans. Hey, guys.
Hey, Leslie.
Hey, Leslie.
Everything's going great in Boston?
Oh, doing fantastic. Doing great. Doing great. Thanks for having us. Really
Our
awesome
pleasure.
present so far.
Cool. So let's check out the current platform capabilities that empower AI. Go ahead, guys.
Fantastic. Yeah, so basically for today, the focus, I'm going to introduce some slides throughout and then pass the baton over to Phoenix and show you the product live. So that's the way we're going to get into it. Hopefully you can hear my voice and see my screen really well. We have approximately 17 minutes for our presentation, so that always is a unique challenge for a pre-sales if you give us an hour and a half. We can cover a lot of ground, but today we want to keep it very focused, very concise. We're going to focus on a primary use case for building an EA baseline with smarter APM, right? So we want to introduce you to some of the changes and innovation to the UI and UX, as well as the ways that we've introduced artificial intelligence. But keep in mind, everything that you've heard from the speakers so far, I've heard a lot of great stuff, right? Beyond just EA baseline value streams, customer journey, even just broader enterprise architecture use cases. While we might not have the time to cover that today, keep in mind, it's in here. Reach out to the website, mega.com. Reach out to your sales director, account executive, engagement manager, whoever it is that you interact with the most. And we can set up a meeting to deep dive into any and all of these different subjects. So what you see on your screen right here is a basic breakdown of the agenda. Like I said, the The biggest focus is going to be on the application and technology rationalization that comes after building an EA baseline of connected enterprise architecture. Then we'll touch on ensuring best practices and continuous improvement, and then end on some Q&A. So that being said, let's get right into it. Phoenix, do you want to share some of the UI, UX improvements, innovations that we've made in this version?
Yeah, I would love to, Nick. So with HopeX Tequila, we've largely focused on improvements of UI, UX, presenting you with the most important metrics right in the middle of your screen to focus on what's most important to you. Past that, you have access to all of your data right at your fingertips, where you can quickly explore things like inventories, access diagrams, dashboards, and very helpful and insightful reports. But as you can expect, when you come into HopeX, you're shopping for architectural building blocks, assets that you're concerned with. So of course, we provide you that ability to full text search and essentially just interact like you're shopping on Amazon. You can filter down by object type, by tag, and even by filter to then dive into all of the details about that selected object.
Very nice. That is very powerful. That's a really easy way to search and navigate the platform for sure. So we've added modular property pages. You'll see that in just a few moments as we get a little deeper into the demonstration. The idea is to make it easier, not just for navigation, but then also with building out the EA baseline and continuous improvement. So we've introduced artificial intelligence in a couple of meaningful ways, from the co-pilot that Luca mentioned in his keynote, to talking to an AI to help you build out a business process flow, for example. But really the big picture idea is that we wanted to make it easier to build things out by eliminating or reducing tedious, mundane tasks that architects usually have to do to stand up an EA practice, and also to keep things up to date. So on this slide right here, you can see the way that we look at it. It's the old way of managing an inventory and enriching an inventory of applications and other objects with the new way, right? So we provide tools to help automate this with both artificial intelligence, and then also just integrating to discover assets, right? Technologies and applications that exist both on-prem or in the cloud. So we'll share with you some of the AI features. Phoenix, I'm curious though, what's your favorite new AI feature that we've implemented in the product in this newest release?
Yeah, for me, it has to be Hexa, our internal co-pilot chatbot trained on all of our best practices, new features, user tips, and navigation as well. You can step in and ask her questions like, how do I model business capabilities? How can I perform effective rationalization of my app portfolio? And she'll shoot you over a quick message as well as traceability back to the documentation that she pulled from. But past that, we've got another couple of areas that we've introduced AI, as you'd mentioned, to help us get started getting data in quickly and with quality. So my favorite that I use, since I'm no BPMN expert, is the process description model that you mentioned. Enter a quick process description with participants and swim lanes and the IT used, and it spits out that diagram very quickly for me. So I can use that to not only model the current state, but of course, model the future state and compare the two as well. What we're going to walk through today, however, is our app rationalization smarter with AI. So we'll step into that tool. The purpose here is to, of course, remove any typically tedious tasks performed by application portfolio managers, to use your discovered list of technology assets, and tell you exactly how to treat and qualify those business applications. As Luca mentioned earlier, applications are treated way more at the granular level than software technologies, because that's what we're looking to eliminate. So with these couple of quick wizards, what we can do is identify those business applications that were discovered, separate from the software technologies, and also get a very helpful start in terms of initializing our portfolios and our governance. So here I have portfolios assigned to my application, and me as the app owner would get any surveys and workflows pointed in my direction. Now we have a second step in kind of our three-step quicker APM process. The second will take us into capability smart mapping using our newly created application portfolio and automatically aligning it with recommendations to the business capability map. The wizard is largely the same as the one that we've seen for app detection. So what we'll do is focus here on the output, which is a business capability heat map. Keep in mind, we've already run the AI through this. So this is what we're left with, a full visual of our current state capabilities and supporting architecture from an application perspective.
Very, very nice. Very nice. So to summarize, we can discover technologies. We can also cross-reference or normalize technology lists that you might already have with the ITpedia that we provide. So not only does it give you lifecycle information, it also gives you the official name state of the technology in a very standard fashion, as well as a unique identifier. So you can keep all of your lifecycle informations up to date. We apply an AI filter that then recommends how you manage that technology as an app or as a technology, and an additional layer of AI to then make a smart recommendation about linking it to a business capability. And then what Phoenix shared with you was one of the outputs, right? So with this platform, it's all data-driven or model-driven. No matter how you get the data in here, whether it's through import or if it's an integration with another system, or if you're creating something brand new in a model, you automatically get the reports. So what Phoenix just shared with you was a really, really nice overlay of a business capability heat map after we've performed these 3 steps. So Phoenix, maybe show us a little bit more about that business capability breakdown, and then we can drill into that from there.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll apply a couple filters on my capabilities to focus on areas that should be prioritized. To do that, I'll select lowly effective capabilities that have the most significant impact or noticeable impact on my business. Here with this very clear layout, I can start to identify strengths, weaknesses, gaps, and redundancies of all of my applications, and of course, drill in deeper from there.
Really great, really great. So again, it's all data driven, and the idea with different open APIs, RESTful web services, it's very easy to keep all these different data points, standardized and up to date. So we provide a business capability heat map where, like Sherlock Holmes, you can deduce different areas where you can make enhancements, improvements, innovation, and then to Gene's point earlier. You can describe your motivations. What's your objective? What's your goal? And then we can link that back to our business capabilities and then understand at a given point in time, what is our expectation of this capability? Is it to crawl? Is it to walk? Is it to run? And then how much are we meeting that or exceeding that specific expectation of our business capability? So it's truly a platform where you can pull all these different data points together, provide an analysis, and then take actionable decisions based on that. So let's drill into that a little bit more. Phoenix, do you want to show us the drill down on an application?
Of course, yeah. So for all reports, they're all clickable. So I can go right to the details of this low health capability, explore the application, and first be presented here with a read-only view. The read-only view describes the current state health, risk, and compliance that application proposes to all of its connected elements. So not only do we have current state view of that application, but we get into the relationships here in our pre-built dependency views. Here I'm understanding the application in the context of IT, data, and business all in one view. So I can drill down to see some of those metrics that have been aggregated up to our dashboard level for our application, to see where maybe we have some non-compliant software technologies supporting that app, or other software technologies proposing some kind of obsolescence or security risk.
Excellent, excellent. So we provide a common interface, right, that you can log into, get an overview, get right to the data points that you need. I can't go into too much depth about the questions I see for Christian. Yes, you can describe bespoke applications. There's a modeling component to this where you can model out the exact structure of your own homegrown application that's internally built and managed? Absolutely. You can also classify by technology stacks. So we do allow for individual technologies as well as stacks. And then you can even map out, configure dependencies up and down that stack as well to understand what does it mean to my homegrown application if a technology is unavailable or something else, right? Will it operate in a degraded manner? Will it not start at all? That's something that we've done with customers in the past. And yes, with Maxime, for your question, scan the network. Yes, we via an agent on a server, we can scan networks and pull back the technologies. And then there's also capabilities via integration to scan cloud technologies as well and pull that information back. So we looked at the one application. You have the data points, but what I'm really curious about, yes, we do the HopeX does relationship management, impact analysis, understand the rate of change. But Phoenix, how do we make all of those data points actionable?
Yeah, great question. The answer is in the form of smart analysis. We'll do the number crunching for you with a pre-built mechanism, its own little algorithm to do all of the weighting and the final calculation. This will take into account many of the metrics that we've already gone through, like business value, obsolescence risk, SLA, and even more, to give you finalized recommendations. This is how you should treat those business applications moving forward into the transformation stage. So right from these decisions, I track those back on my applications and can generate real projects with that as a deliverable, whether we're decommissioning it or adding new, and past that, the link back to the capability. Why are we launching this project? What are we trying to improve from a capability perspective?
Really nice, really nice. So it's a place where we can receive recommendations. Should we put some more money? Should we invest in an application? But then additionally, you can manage this from a project portfolio perspective as well. So there's project charters, build out a business case for your project. And then again, extend that to your strategy. Understand which projects are helping you to enable and innovate your most important strategies, right? In terms of objectives and goals. I did just see another question come into the chat. I did answer that there. But we have an out-of-the-box integration with ServiceNow. That integration is bidirectional. So you can assign the source of truth and then exchange those data points as necessary. It's really a best practice to integrate HopeX with other systems. Typically, there's no intention to rip and replace. We're usually focused on how can we enhance, augment, innovate, right, the usage of other systems. But yeah, ServiceNow, we're absolutely covered there, as well as other output tools. So we have a lot of customers that are outputting to Tableau or Power BI. But we also, what you can see on your screen right here, we provide our own enterprise architecture portal. So it's called HopeX 360. Just have a quick little snapshot of the CIO dashboard. Phoenix is going to demonstrate that for you. But this is a self-service portal that anyone at your organization can go to. It's unlicensed, and pull any kind of report, visualization, diagram from this portal right here that Phoenix is going to demonstrate.
Yeah, I think, Nick, you kind of said it all there. We've got inventories, diagrams, and reports fed from the read-write side of the house. That's here published for everybody, license-free. The one important thing, though, is, of course, this is going to be generated right after the inventory stage. So you have some immediate value that you can start to communicate and distribute throughout all of your organization, not even just your architects. Now, HopeX 360 has been designed to require no training at all. So CIOs, other stakeholders can step in and get a lot of the same dashboarding views that your architects will support. Here, just like HopeX, you can drill into your architecture to understand dependencies, impacts, and get to a lot of the same screens that we've seen within the full platform. So I'm going back to this very same airportmega.com application. And once again, we're presented with the most important information from a lifecycle perspective, hosting type, and basics in terms of responsibilities. But past that, we support visualizations within within the tool that get automatically updated as the data and relationships change. There's something here for each and every persona, your IT users, your business architects looking for capabilities, processes, and projects that are supported by your application. But rest assured, for anyone that wants to go deep into the IT world, we've got structure diagrams here for you too.
Excellent. So just to summarize, what we're giving you is a connected approach to enterprise architecture through automation, discovery tools, artificial intelligence in creative and clever ways to reduce, right, the time needed to build out that baseline, and then also for the continuous improvements and enhancements. Here, I just wanted to illustrate what you can do with that time that you are now given back. You can now have better, deeper conversations with a variety of different stakeholders, and then break into other use cases and empower ultimately. So I see Leslie, welcome back to the stage.
Yes, thank you, both of you, Nick and Phoenix. Beautiful. It's nice to see how OPEX is evolving and very powerful tools. I'm not going to add any additional questions here because you guys just handle it. Thanks a lot, pulling right out of the chat, so I don't have to do that for you, so we can move right on to the last of our interventions on the event, because yeah, we're nearing the end of our event. Thank you again, Nick and Phoenix.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of your day.
You too.
If the audience has any more questions about product topics, don't hesitate to reach out to Nick and Phoenix through the chat, and they'll be responsive on that. Okay. It's my pleasure to welcome William Ulrich. Hello, William, from the Business Architecture Guild. In this final session, we'll explore how business architecture delivers value by aligning strategy and execution, thereby driving competitive advantage. Bill, I'm really happy that you could be here today with us.
Thank you so much. How's my sound? Okay?
It's wonderful. Thank you.
Great.
I'm going to even leave you the floor so you can get right into it, okay?
Okay. Appreciate that. Let me share my screen. Give me 1 second. Window. Slideshow. Let me just get back to where I was. Hang on a second. There we go. All right. Screens jump around a lot. Thank you for having me today. My name is Bill Ulrich. William in print, but Bill. And I am speaking today on behalf, or I guess representing, Business Architecture Guild. My topic is delivering business value through business architecture, so we'll talk about that today. Heavy on the value proposition. I am a consultant. Tactical Strategy Group is a company I've had for the last 30 plus years. I'm also a trainer with Business Architecture Associates. Those two companies are my day job. My role at the Guild is as a volunteer. So I do a good bit of work with them. So we're going to be covering today, and I should say I've been consulting in business and IT transformation for well over 40 years. So I'm probably dating myself, but just a little bit of background. So what I want to talk about today and really get into is business architecture, the value it brings, and then in the sort of the short period I have of time, I want to go through a few focal points. And I will take questions at the end. So if people can certainly stack those up, and I will be responding to those with our moderator near the end of the session today. Formal definition, it's always useful to have a definition of things. And as a business architect, it's something we're quite focused on. But more important, I think, as well, is the value proposition of what business architecture brings to the table. The formal definition, and this has been around, it came actually originally out of the Object Management Group, the standards body, international standards body. We'll look at a standard later from them. But essentially a blueprint of the enterprise, or think about your business ecosystem, provides a common understanding of the organization. So everybody from the strategic planning team, business leaders, architects, the business rank and file professionals, IT folks, developers, designers, and so forth have the same perspective, although more detail at one end, less detail at the other, more summary level at one end, more granular at the other. To focus on delivering strategic objectives and tactical demands, which is pretty much our theme today. Value proposition, business architecture enables effective, streamlined strategy execution. I'm going to be talking about a strategy execution framework here. This is courtesy of the Business Architecture Guild, and we'll give you a little more information about the Guild as we go. One of the challenges that organizations face, and I could have filled this whole page and many more pages with statistics on the challenges organizations face in terms of strategy execution, is the failure to successfully execute on their business strategies. There's a number of stats out there saying organizations feel they're pretty good at setting strategy, but not so good at achieving strategy. There's a corollary statistic here based on 25 years of Standish Group research that fewer than 30% of programs and projects are delivered successfully. That means they're running over budget, they are under-delivering, and they are taking way longer than they should. There's lots of examples out there, but when I talk to people who have been in the trenches for many years, generally the feedback I get is, yeah, that's normal. That's pretty much the way things are. So that's a difficult way to get across to delivering on your strategies. One of the more disconcerting statistics is that 9 out of 10 business leaders concede they are missing major market opportunities. This is from a PwC strategy paper. That is really problematic because you fall behind if you cannot be competitive. Even if you're a government organization, you're under delivering on your mission, right? So there's a lot of challenges organizations face. So successful strategy execution relies on a clear perspective from strategy formulation, which we're seeing this framework here for the first time, 5 stages, up at the front end, through solution deployment at the back end. The 5 stages, which I'll break down a little more in the next slide, essentially take you through setting strategy, determining impact, understanding what the future looks like based on that strategy, framing your initiative plans and your investments, and then executing on an iterative delivery basis. So if we break this down further, we can talk a little bit more about the value business architecture brings to end-to-end strategy execution and how and why that makes it more successful. And we'll give you a little more on business architecture in some follow-up slides. So if I talk about stage 1, I'd like to define my strategies with full confidence of understanding the business ecosystem. Oh, we need to fix this over here. Well, this same thing is happening in these other places across these different business units. Why don't we focus on those as well at the same time and get the right people in the room to have that conversation? So that can even affect your strategy setting. Or we'd like to do this, but we really don't have the capabilities in place to do that. So that's sort of up front. You can define a more workable strategy, I guess is how one would put it, if you can do that up front. But then we go into a much more of a formal impact assessment. And as a business architect and some of the other architects involved in this, EAs and so on, you would want to be able to move very, very quickly. We'll talk about how to move through this and get to solution deployments very quickly. There's very little time to wait, especially if you're into planning cycles on an annual basis and you have just a handful of weeks or maybe less in some cases to provide your insights and input. You don't have a whole lot more time than that, so you have to have a baseline to move quickly. But what you want to say is, the scope is this big. Can we still continue investing in that? There's a feedback loop that goes back, if you need to the planners so they can understand all this. And then one would move into understanding what the solution, the future looks like. If we want to implement this strategy, our data architecture needs to change in this way. If we want to implement this strategy, we need to have a much more rationalized perspective of our software environment. If we want to do this, we need to change maybe the organization design. Maybe we need to invest in a different approach to work management and work management design. Once we understand those things and we understand what the future looks like, we want to move into initiative planning. Streamlined, not unsiloed, ideally, initiatives. Those are investments that we're going to make in deploying solutions. And we're using the term initiatives as a generic term. Whatever you want to use in your organization is fine. That can certainly break down if you're using Agile into a series of sprints and so forth. And then through a series of iterative, highly agile, highly interoperable, highly optimized deliveries, we're going to deploy solutions. This can work for anything. You can use it for COTS or off-the-shelf packages. You can use it for upgrades to existing systems. A lot of the focus here is on major transformations and getting to the new. But this strategy execution framework works really for anything. I will point out that in reality, in practice, and one of the undermining elements of the statistics you see is people try to set strategy. They say, I want to do this. Instead of saying, I want to do this business objective or achieve it, they say, I want to do this thing, which is an action item or a course of action without an objective behind it. And then they jump to set up a project and then jump to stage 5 and start implementing. We don't understand the impact. We don't understand where we're going to go. We try to figure that out as we go at the back end. It puts everybody in the effort in a awkward position, and we end up delivering something that's not really useful. So where does business architecture play a role? It plays a role at all 5 stages. We just talked about that. What does business architecture look like? Well, essentially, formal representations of the business ecosystem. We use that term instead of enterprise because it's a better scoping term. And we want to be able to represent it from 2 perspectives. One is from what we call a core business architecture domain perspective of the capabilities we have, the information we use, the value streams that deliver value to our stakeholders, and the organizational structure. Then to practice or deploy business architecture, and stakeholders are probably at the top of that list, we would have our strategies, our policies, stakeholders, of course, the products we deliver to customers, end customers, the initiatives we invest in, and then the metrics that sort of represent all of this. If we have all of these things, we're very mature on the scale. You don't need them all to get started. You certainly don't need them all to move into strategy execution and start doing this work. What we want to start is a minimally viable baseline. We'll talk about how to get there quickly in a little bit using the concept of reference models. But a minimally viable baseline for business architecture is an ecosystem-wide, and that's at level 1, level 2 capability maps. So you don't skip things because you think it's going to save time. It costs you more time to skip things, but you would have a capability map that represents your ecosystem, an information map that parallels it. So every business object in the capability map is represented by an information concept, and then the essential value streams. You don't need all of them fully worked out, but the important ones that you need to invest in, you want. That allows you to launch into strategy execution end to end. And if you need to build out other things along the way, you can do that real time. Because business architectures are not static. They should never be static. They should evolve as they're used. And evolve means more detail, more granularity, more domain representations, and so forth. How do I want to set this up? Well, first of all, I'll start from the bottom. I need a knowledge base to store this metadata. If I don't have a formal knowledge base, and if my main tool is Excel or Visio, I can't scale my business architecture practice. It just frankly becomes unwieldy, even at the most minimalistic level, right? So as soon as you need to start cross-checking and cross-mapping things, I need a repository of that metadata that everybody can get into in a tool-enabled, standards-aligned meta model. I'll talk about some standards for that a little later. And how those form. But essentially, I need to be able to capture not just this information, but extending it to connect to the IT architecture and to other business disciplines. Then I need to be able to have on-demand and ad hoc information out of there. We call those our blueprints. Those can come in many forms. One example is a capability map, and other examples in an information to capability map cross-mapping, and the list goes on and on and on from there. And then to really understand how to practice, I want to have basic scenarios. If you're a really experienced business architect, you can do these in your head. But for most business architects, it's nice to have some sort of formal set of scenarios that you can kind of work out as you go. So that's sort of the baseline. Let me talk a little bit about differentiators and then get into a little more on the usage and context. Business architecture, why is it different? It's holistic. Except for the organization map, it really looks across and beyond the business architectures or the business silos or boundaries. We're not constrained by that happens in this business unit, this happens in that business unit. We look at it as a whole. We assess it as a whole. We invest and change that ecosystem in a holistic and whole fashion. It's persistent. We build it once. That's our baseline. We evolve it, right? And it's not linked to a given strategy, program, project, or investment. It is persisted and reused over and over again in the knowledge base. It starts, and one of the key factors is having an outside-in view. An external stakeholder perspective on value delivery is really key. There's a view on value creation. How do I create value? And value consumption. How does the stakeholder, whether it be my customer or an internal stakeholder or partner, how do they gain value as I go, both incrementally and then over the long term? Related practices, it makes them better, right? If I have a business architecture, I can be more articulate and in my scoping of my requirements. If I have a business architecture and I can tie it to my customer experience, I can improve the customer experience more quickly. Strategic planning, product management, work management, Agile, it can be integrated with Agile. IT architecture, of course, plays a role across the board. A different way about thinking about organizations, it is. Some people, when they're first learning this, are a little uncomfortable, but it is a very different way of looking at an organization. It's essentially breaking down the ecosystem into a series of rationalized business objects and actions against those objects. I just defined what a capability is. I'm also looking at end-to-end stakeholder value delivery that's enabled by capabilities, so I have to connect those parts. And I'm also looking at enabling planning execution teams to view the organization as a whole, which we talked about. These are some sample scenarios. We call these macro scenarios. There are micro scenarios, but let me just run through a couple of these quickly. So say I want to shift from a customer-centric, from a product-centric or business unit-centric business model where everything is siloed and the customer is replicated across each silo. I want to move to a customer-centric business model where I have one view of customer. I can go there and I can see all the agreements I have with the different business units. Let's say I'm a financial institution. I can see that they've got this type of investment, that type of investment, or I'm an insurance company and I can see that they have these different insurance products and so forth. So I want to have one view of the customer. That's a big shift. Business architecture is ideal for these types of major scaled transformations. It also works for small things, like I want to expedite underwriting end-to-end for my insurance products or my financial products. I want to not only expedite it, but I want to make sure that I improve my risk assessments during my underwriting and deliver things that are going to not be defaulted or induce a lot of claims later. So those are what we call micro scenarios. So scenarios help you frame your thinking, especially if you're a new business architect, frame your thinking around how you want to use and apply. It's really critical to understand scenarios because that's where the value is delivered back to the business. And you want to move from as quickly as possible and as transparently as possible from building out a business architecture to using a business architecture where the value is. So you want to move very quickly into that. I want to say a word about business architecture and artificial intelligence. It falls across really two categories. I'm not sure either one of these are widely deployed yet. And I know AI is all over organizations around the globe, and many organizations are providing AI insights. But there's really two areas. One is, can I use my business architecture knowledge base and apply intelligent technology to that? And it also extends into IT domains to serve as a source for automating or expediting end-to-end strategy execution? Can I maybe make more intelligent assessments of the strategies I want to pursue based on AI insights into the knowledge base? Can I do a rapid impact assessment that's highly automated or automated assist? Can I help frame future state? If I have this particular situation and I have this particular current state, and I know I want to go to this future state based on what's in the business architecture and what's been articulated, can I use AI to build out more intelligent data architectures and solution architectures, right? Can I automate that? Can I automate some of my analysis downstream? Can I move more quickly through the deployment and software design and software creation and deployment? Can I move all the way seamlessly from strategy execution through solution deployment with a high AI assist? If you have a rigorous, well-defined knowledge base with the information I showed and more, I'm not showing the whole picture, I'm just showing sort of the core set. If you have that in your knowledge base, you can do that. The second area where we can really bring value is in business-driven designs and software solutions that can be built in such a way that can incrementally move from, today it's manual, right? This work queue is manual. It's managed by one of our leads, to an automated assist where it starts to do some of the work, to full automation and basically turning the decision-making over to AI and incrementally automating it. And there's ways to do this and ways the business architecture supports that. And there's work management designs that support that around dynamic rules-based routing and so forth that I'm not really getting into in a lot of depth here, but those are some options. If you're interested in the first bullet, there's a link here to the Cognitive Enterprise Envisioning the Business of the Future. It's a paper I did a couple of years ago. How do I set it up? Yes, question?
Bill, I'm sorry, we're just running short on time.
Okay.
It's absolutely fascinating. So I think we actually need to move to one of the questions. There were quite a few questions in the chat, but we're just picking
Okay,
one.
let me wrap this up really quickly, okay?
Sure, okay.
Okay. This is the center of excellence. I think it kind of speaks to itself. There are a couple industry standards. They are both heavily influenced by business architecture and the BizBoc guide, which is the body of knowledge from the Business Architecture Guild. And this is some background on the Guild. I think you're all getting a copy of the PDF. If you're interested, individuals can join at a very low amount. And there are also corporate memberships. And then if you want to move forward, get yourself educated. Don't go by hearsay or go by rumor what you think business architecture is. Get into it, get certified. If you're an organization, start with the value proposition. Don't start by bringing it in and trying to sell it, upscale it. Deliver on the value and find out why it's important for your organization to be able to bring that value. Okay, let's turn it over for questions.
Thank you so much, Bill. You've already managed to, there's a lot of really interesting content, and sorry to make you have to squeeze it like this.
That's okay.
One of the questions that we thought was interesting from the chat is someone made a remark about process. They're wondering, does processes, is that a part of this business architecture framework?
No, and I'll tell you why.
Okay, tell me why.
It is first of all, it's an operating model concept. It is a how do I implement this concept, right? And process flows in the traditional sense. And I know there's high level and low level processes, but process flows in the low level sense basically expand complexity based on exception processing. As you try to get the last 10% of the exceptions, the thing bloats up to scale. If I use that as a baseline for creating software, I create bloated software systems. If you use a business architecture, there's a technique called dynamic rules-based routing, where I can actually design a state machine-based event-driven solution that accommodates exceptions without exploding, and it becomes a much leaner solution. They are not, you can still use processes, that's fine. Don't get me wrong. But they are not part of business architecture because they're continuously changing based on operational decisions and situations. The architecture is not.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Bill, for taking out your time to share these ideas and best practices with us today. It's been great having you. See you soon. Thanks
Okay.
again, Bill.
If people have more questions, they can always email me or follow up.
Of course.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I need to leave the room.
So as we conclude our Mega EMEA and North America Exchange Conference, I want to express my gratitude for the engaging audience and the compelling agenda that made this event a success. A heartfelt thank you to all of our speakers, including Bill and Katie and Luca and Grant, and all the attendees as well for making these 2 hours truly interactive and enriching. Please remember to visit our website and connect with us on LinkedIn to stay updated. You'll find links in the chat. We regularly host events and publish insightful content on our blog and news on our website. And if you want to rewatch a part of that you found particularly valuable or you missed a session today, don't worry, we'll send the entire presentation afterwards. Thank you again. Have a great afternoon and evening. Let's stay in touch. See you at our future events.